What would you do to get out of a job? And also, what if the thing that you strive for your whole life ended up being made out of Lego? Welcome to Tinfoil Helmets, your occasional spicy hot take roundup with the latest F1 rumors with the almost believable conspiracy theories to back them up. Everything here has been carefully researched for hours to make sure it is totally founded in logic, reason, and truth. Or not. Who knows? Have we got anything right about the British Grand Prix, the Qatar Airways British Grand Prix?
Not really. You did. I said Lewis was going to win because it would be awesome for him to win at Silverstone. And for a moment, just a brief moment, as the clouds parted, and there was a moment, it seemed possible, but it didn't happen. So here we are. But at least everybody got to go home early.
Yeah. Not with the Ferraris doing Ferrari things.
Oh yeah, Ferrari.
And the McLaren's 30 seconds up the road doing McLaren things.
Only helped by a certain Nico Hülkenberg, but we'll come back to that later. You suggested that there would be rain, and you delivered.
There was rain. However, I have to say one of my favorite moments I actually watched qualifying this week, and one of my favorite moments was apparently Jeremy Clarkson had texted Martin Brundle saying, there will not be rain in qualifying, and then it immediately rained, or it immediately started spitting. They even joked about it on the grid this morning, which was very funny. The best TV moment ever. There will be no rain. It is raining. Yeah. So Clarkson and Caleb were on the grid. That was fun to see on the grid walk.
Were they amusing?
Yeah. I mean, okay. As Clarkson more amusing than Caleb because, Caleb is very much out of his element on a Formula One grid. There are people around. He doesn't know what to do.
Have you watched his comedy show on the Amazons?
No.
I have not. His stand-up comedy show that they did at the beginning, that they talked about at the beginning of Clarkson's Farm this season, apparently is on Amazon. So, I don't know if I want to spend the time to watch that, but we'll see.
I mean, does he fancy himself a comedian, or did he have a great team of writers?
I don't know, but he did an actual tour. It wasn't a one-off. He did a whole tour. He was gone for like weeks, months even. So.
Yeah, I thought that was just more of like a cashing in on his celebrity to go spend time with other farmers in other communities sort of thing.
I assumed so too, but I did not realize they recorded it. But here we are.
Good for Caleb.
Yeah, good for Caleb. You gotta do what you gotta do. But back to your predictions. You also predicted that Oscar would extend his lead.
Well, if he didn't jam on his brakes, he definitely would have. Oh, that was my other spicy possible intro take of Oscar is also one of the bad boys now.
Yes, he knows.
For everybody thinking Oscar had a squeaky clean reputation, no, he is as dirty as the rest of them.
And that's how he's going to become world champion.
The best ones are.
Exactly. And then George is best of the Battle of the Brits. No, and I was so happy with this.
Yeah, I'm gonna say yes because I jinxed George, and that's always good. Only Ollie Behrman could stand in his way of being the worst placed British driver.
At least Ollie tried and didn't make some stupid mistakes. But
Ollie actually had a pretty good race, despite starting from Austria.
Yeah, basically Austria. On top of that, I think Ollie is the perfect replacement for Lewis when Lewis retires at the end of 2026.
Yeah, that's a good bet. Another driver that can be ruined by Ferrari.
Yeah, exactly. Young, full of energy, and destroy their soul.
Honestly though, that does make sense in the sense of, when McLaren signed Lando and Daniel, it was the first time that they weren't able to have a former world champion on their roster in forever. And it's if they moved on to Charles and Ollie, it would be kind of the same for Ferrari in that same sort of sense. And maybe they could work back to the greatness of Ferrari.
Was it not also true that when they had Carlos Sainz, though, he was also not so it was Carlos and Lando. That was the first time McLaren didn't have a champion.
Yeah, and I guess with Charles and Carlos, that was the same as well. But still, same sort of vibes.
Charles thinks he's a world champion, but has not yet delivered the goods. And Carlos hoped to be a world champion, whereas I don't think Ollie Behrman is that deluded yet.
I'm not entirely sure Charles hasn't delivered the goods so much as he just hasn't been delivered a car. Because it was looking good there at the start of 2022, and then Ferrari just nuked the any sort of technical development that Adrian Newey said, hold on, I'll be really good at this.
Typical.
And then you also have to get out of the way of Ferrari strategy department as well.
Do you need to get out of the way of the Ferrari strategy department? They will find you anyway, come day or night.
If you flipped the McLaren cars and the Ferrari cars, I'm not sure that the two Ferrari drivers would be as dominant as the two McLaren drivers are. Because of Ferrari.
Oh, I see. If you swap the cars, but not the. I see. Yes,
yes. If you just swapped the cars around, and yes. And also the knowledge that it takes to run that car in the window, you swapped all the data and everything else, and if you had a wish with a genie and you said, I wanted to swap the McLaren and Ferrari cars, and nobody ever knew anything, just this is how they switched. Ferrari would be like, this isn't our power unit, this is a Mercedes. Oh, well.
And that's how they'd ruin it. Shall we move on to between race drama?
Oh, it was a busy week in the between race dramas.
I thought it was really quiet, but maybe I just haven't been paying attention.
That's because everything on my social media feeds was pretty much, is Max going to Mercedes? Is Max going to Mercedes? Is Max going to Mercedes? George turned down his Mercedes deal. Is Max going to Mercedes? Is Max going to Mercedes? Is Max going to Mercedes? So in that sense, it was a very busy week.
True. I will concede that it was busy in volume, but only a limited number of stories.
And everybody had a take, and don't worry, we have ours coming up.
Do we? I'm excited.
I'm sure we do.
Okay, so the first bit of news was there's an American running for the president of the FIA who clearly won't win.
Is it Zach Brown?
No, it's not. It's a guy called Tim something or other who used to be a race steward.
Sounds too qualified. Next.
Yeah, exactly. Everybody says Max is going to Mercedes except Red Bull.
To be clear, Red Bull didn't say he wasn't going to Mercedes. Red Bull said something along the lines of, the contract is very clear.
Horner also came out and said that Max would like to finish his career at Red Bull.
Yeah, that was a quote that Max made in 2021. Are we just dragging up old quotes at this point?
No, this was from Horner. He said it this week. But here's the thing: he didn't say. Yeah,
Horner said it this week. When did Max last say it to Christian?
Yeah, but here's the thing: nothing in that statement precludes Max going to Mercedes. It just means that for Max to finally retire, he has to return to Red Bull.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah. So. And on one of those 1 day contract sort of situations, so he can retire a Red Bull driver.
Yes, so he isn't a liar. Yes, so everybody says that Max, it's basically a done deal, and it was waiting on the board of Mercedes to approve it. And we know what the board of Mercedes does at the last minute. They make stupid choices like saying, no, we can't give Lewis an ambassadorship. But, such is life.
But Max is white, just like the Germans. He might be able to pull it off.
Good point.
And he's probably not asking for an ambassadorship.
No, he would be asking for ambassadorship for Red Bull drinking, so he can go around the world getting taurined up on the caffeine and the sugar. As part of this, it came out that George was offered a 1+1 deal, and apparently he turned it down, saying he wanted more. And I find this very funny, because when you offer somebody a 1+1, it's because you don't really want to keep them, but you kind of want to keep them, but you don't really want to keep them.
It's the you're already here. We'll do you the good thing of at least giving you a contract, but no, we'd rather.
And in light of the performance of his in the race today, I feel that kind of sealed the deal.
He was the best placed Mercedes driver.
Only because the other one got rear-ended. Also because the other one wasn't doing very well either.
No.
But that's all right. It's Kimi's first year. You know the meme of Gordon Ramsay and the thing where Gordon Ramsay hugs the one kid? It's like, no, it's okay. Don't worry, you set fire to the kitchen. And then the other frame of the meme is that he's calling somebody an absolute donkey because they set fire to the kitchen. Kimi is the first frame. George is the second frame.
Well, to be clear in all of that, one of them is a kid trying their best, and the other one is a chef who says they're a professional.
Again, that's exactly correct.
Yeah, actually, it is. Yeah. Yes, no, perfect. Yeah, okay. I'll agree. Yeah.
So we'll see what's going on there. I have a spicy suggestion here that maybe actually George is going to end up in the Cadillac with Valtteri.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. And then
or the Alpine with Valtteri.
Wow, yeah. Talk about... No, Pierre's doing a pretty good... Pierre got P6 today, so credit to Pierre.
Yeah. But it is definitely interesting that George did say he wanted a longer-term contract. It does seem that Mercedes is souring on George. It does seem like Max is available for the poaching.
I am so interested to see when this happens. Less so whether Max wins a bunch of championships or whatever, but how Max does adapting to a different car.
I think he'll be just fine.
I know he's young enough and stupid enough to pull it off.
Also good enough. Well,
exactly.
Also, if he can adapt to how crap this Red Bull drives on week in and week out, he can adapt to a consistently good car.
Which is why he should be in the Racing Bull for the rest of the season. But anyway, okay, the other piece of news that's going on here is apparently Valtteri's going to Alpine because Alpine yet again have picked a driver who they don't know what to do with, and they're going to go and try the old Racing Bulls method, which is we can't get it with the young kids, so let's get an oldie in and do it with him, and we'll see whether this happens.
There's also the potential that Jack Doohan's back in the seat.
Why would you do that? Like, just pick Valtteri. As much as I'm worried that if he goes to Alpine, it stops him from getting the Cadillac.
I think you just need to go every other week at this point in time between Jack Doohan and Franco Colapinto. Just every other week. Don't give them any chance to get consistency or momentum. Just every other week.
We should throw in Logan Sargent. We should throw in Valtteri Bottas. We should get Danny Rick in there. Just rotate them through over the rest of the season and see who gets the best race.
Oh, that was some between race drama. Danny Rick said he is done with Formula One.
Yeah, he said he'd retired. He used the R word.
Yes.
So, yeah. Last but not least, speaking of the old Cadillac, who's rumoured to have taken basically every driver we have just mentioned, apparently Keanu Reeves is doing another Formula One documentary about Cadillac. He's been embedded with the team since day one. And I'm wondering, is this the Disney F1 tie-up that they keep advertising with the Mickey Mouse thing? Because remember, the Braun GP was a Disney show.
Yeah, that could be interesting.
So,
has Keanu ever done a Disney thing?
Yeah, the Braun thing. The Braun GP was Disney.
Oh, really?
Good documentary. Highly recommend watching that. Yeah, it was on Hulu.
Oh. Hulu, you say?
Hulu. He was a right hooligan. So, while you are clarifying more information to understand exactly whether Keanu Reeves can be a Disney princess or not, let's move quickly on to our occasional segment. Does Blank still have a job? We've already talked about Franco.
He was a voice in Toy Story 4. That's definitely Disney.
Oh, yeah, there you go. They've locked him in. Franco, who had a terrible qualifying, which we'll get to in a bit, and has basically had a terrible race, and then didn't get to race today because they changed his engine and then his gearbox exploded in the pit lane. It wasn't very good at all. I think Kimi is actually starting to look quite questionable. If you're sitting down between George and Max, let's put aside the inter-driver dynamic between George and Max that might be challenging. Do you keep Kimi? Because that's the other rumor that I saw on the internet, that Alpine being up for sale these days and going for Mercedes engines, Mercedes might buy Alpine, make Alpine the B team, the Racing Bulls of the Mercedes stable, and then you can put Kimi in that car for a couple of years, let him mature out, let him grow up a bit, and then you can keep George and Max on the main team.
I don't know if I've necessarily seen anything that makes me ready to demote Kimi.
No.
I think the question there is who is a better mentor to drivers, Max or George?
Max.
Really?
Yes. Every driver that has been with Max has said how great it has been with Max, and Max is really willing to coach them and provide them all the information, except Perez. And on top of that, every driver that has been paired with Max has been really good when they left the team. Right? Pierre has been actually really good since he left the team. Danny, well, apart from the whole McLaren thing. Alex, exactly. Except Liam, but Liam only got 5 minutes because he was crap.
Yuki certainly hasn't gotten better under the Red Bull, but I think that just goes to how crap that Red Bull car is.
Yeah.
It's a bad car.
Did you hear the stat about Yuki? He is now the of the active drivers on the grid, he's the driver who has the most races without the podium.
Oh. Well, since there's hope for him yet. Hold on. Now I got to go look up Yuki.
99.
He's only at 99 races?
Yep.
Oh, well, he's got 130 to go. It'll be fine.
Yeah, exactly. He's got plenty of time. Shall we move on to quali recap?
Yeah. It rained briefly. Not enough to really slow anything down.
I will say that if you are a Brit, you will understand what kind of rain it was. It was one of the 48 types of rain. It was very, very brief for such a small smattering. And it did make it a little bit hard for some people to make it through, but it was fine. It was a very light drizzle, possibly just spitting.
You know who almost made it really hard to get through, though? Ferrari and Lewis Hamilton.
They did, but first of all, we should talk about Franco Colapinto, because Franco Colapinto didn't realize that you probably shouldn't put the rear wheel on some wet paint and then floor it and then put it in a wall. Yeah, Franco.
See, that's the kind of experience you need in a Formula One car. Just put Brad Pitt in.
Yes, Brad Pitt, because he's a misogynist Gaston. And then we have Ferrari, and Ferrari, the greatest team, who are extremely well qualified. They know exactly how to plan a qualifying session. It was truly fantastic. But somehow they managed to basically nearly get knocked out in Q1 with both drivers because they didn't fuel the cars enough to do 2 laps.
But also, even if you didn't fuel, so if you weren't going to fuel the cars for 2 laps, why send them out with so much time remaining on a track that's clearly going to evolve?
Yeah, great questions. Lots of questions for the Ferrari team, and I hope they had a good debrief there. Oh, that was the other thing that happened in between race drama. Lewis was interviewed and asked about his relationship, and apparently he's thrown down the gauntlet to the strategy team at Ferrari, saying, you need to sort your strategy out, and we need to agree to things before the race, otherwise I'm going to have to ignore you while driving, and I don't want to do that. And I thought that was awesome.
Stand by, we are checking.
Stand by, we're checking. The sad thing is even if he wants to ignore them, Ferrari didn't put enough fuel in, so we got this lovely exchange where Lewis comes around, what was it? I think it was a minute and a half from the end of the session in Q1.
I'm ready to go again. Nope.
Yeah, Lewis goes, can I go again? And then Ricky, in his deadpan, completely monotonic response was, no. Actually, I can't even do it monotonically enough. It was just beautiful. And then Lewis goes, no. See, I can't do it without putting emotion in the voice. Lewis asks, why? There's plenty of time. And then Ricky goes, negative on fuel. And we get the beautiful, perfect response from Lewis, the most crestfallen you ever hear him going, oh. And then they did the same to Charles.
He got through.
He did get through by the hair on his chin.
He was 14th. That he could have fallen one more position.
He had one more spot. And Charles basically was so close to. But then the Ferrari drivers took in the face of adversity where we as human beings are challenged and we rise above and put in some absolutely banging laps in Q2. And I think they ended P1 and P2 and the end of Q2. It was great. They showed their pace. It was fantastic.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, the Lando or Max and the McLarens had kind of put in a really good time up front and then really didn't do much for the rest of the session. So then as the track evolved, the Ferraris did come in and go faster.
And then we finally show up into Q3, and we are trading blows like the titans of the sport. Back and forth and back and forth. And then Oscar overcooks it by being too excited and trying too hard. And manages to lose, 2/10 on his final lap. If he could have just improved on that when I think there was time for him to do that, he would have possibly got the pole. Because it was
He did
Max.
get pole. Oh, no, Max got pole.
Max got pole by 1/10, man.
Yes, because Red Bull sold out everything for qualifying. Well, everybody, I think McLaren actually said they were running some sort of like hybrid rain setup of some sorts.
Because
it looks
the team knows what rain is.
Yeah, it looks like McLaren and Ferrari were both apparently running like a setup that would have been good for the wet. And Red Bull was like, if we want to keep Max in the team, we need to put him in the best chance to win. And we're going to pretend it's not going to rain tomorrow. And that skinny wing was going to do him no good in a rain.
And then GP gave a lovely quote to Max at the very end saying, we went motor racing. And I couldn't work out whether that was a secret veiled statement about some cheating that had been going on or not.
I feel like that was a callback to Abu Dhabi 2021.
Exactly.
Yeah. Because that was what Michael Massey told Toto.
Exactly.
When essentially that to me felt like the Red Bull pit wall telling Max hell no to Mercedes, in the same way Michael Massey said hell no to Mercedes way back in Abu Dhabi 21 of we went motor racing.
I like it. I like your thinking. See, you're connecting the dots that I couldn't see. Perfect.
Yeah, it's not the case of it's you don't want to go to Mercedes because we actually go motor racing here. We don't just cry to the stewards or something like that.
Yeah.
That's it was a very interesting choice of words from GP for sure.
It's because GP doesn't want to go and work at Mercedes because the commute to Brackley is so much further than his house in Milton Keynes. He just doesn't want to move.
That's fair. However, could you imagine GP and Bono working side by side?
It'd be beautiful.
That'd be pretty good.
Yeah.
I did see Bono had because like Kimi did some sort of pit stop challenge thing with the McLaren or the Mercedes pit crew, and he was in charge of like adjusting the front wing angle, so he had to like come in and do the screwdriver thing on the front wing. And he was chatting with, and then he went to chat with Bono about it, like, look, I did the thing. And Bono was holding a coffee cup that said Bono, and it's like, that's pretty good. It was like holographic Bono on a stainless steel coffee cup. It was very good.
I still think the analogy for those two, and I think hopefully they stay together for a while, is exactly like the Finding Nemo turtle thing. The big little perfect, absolutely.
Crush and yeah.
Yep. Then the rest of qualifying was basically just noise and nobody really cares about it. But it should be noted for those that are going to listen along that a certain driver called Nico Hülkenberg qualified in P19. This will be relevant later. Just keep that in your minds, listeners.
Fair enough. And Lance Stroll in P17.
P17. Oh yeah, I forgot about that. That's because
once again showing how great he is in Q1, because Formula One, the fastest position or the fastest racing series. P1, where you want to end up. Lance Stroll, Q1. Perfect. I can't think of any other reason why you should be great. Have to be in Q1.
Q1 stands for quick one.
Yeah, exactly.
Because what's his name? Lance is a quick one.
I did think it was very interesting with qualifying, though. It set everybody up for like is it going to be Lewis? Is it going to be a McLaren? Is it going to be Lewis? Is it going to be a McLaren? Do. Max Verstappen like just rocked right in at the last minute. The graphic that popped up like several times on my social media feed was like straights fastest, high speed corners fastest, low speed corners 18th. Like that car was so set up for straight line speed it wasn't even funny.
That was beautiful. Should we turn to the race?
I don't even know what happened in that race.
Well, we should start off with what happened before it even started. They decided to change Franco Colapinto's engine. And he was going to start from the pit lane, except he broke it in the pit lane because the engine went pop, or the gearbox went pop. Either way, he was stuck in gear and couldn't get out, so such is life. And then...
It was very funny because it was just one of those situations of like, and Franco's out? Did Franco start? Like he was grayed out on the screen and everybody was like, where'd Franco go? What happened to him?
But nobody talked about it until lap, 11.
5. Yeah, 5.
Yeah,
7,
everyone was like, wait a minute, there's other drivers. Where's Frank? What? Oh. And then we didn't talk about it. The commentators were incredulous, and I think a misunderstanding by the commentators, which caught me out, was that it was a safety car formation lap. And I think, because Martin Brundle was very upset about this, because I was incredulous, like, this track looks dry, you don't need a formation lap under the safety car. Everybody thought it was going to be a rolling start, but thank the Lord, his honourable Jesus H. Christ, that we actually had an actual start rather than a rolling start. And so we did a formation lap with the safety car for I don't think any particularly valuable reason.
Bert needed a sliding lap.
I have a more conspiracy theory laden version, because we saw a number of safety cars in this race that maybe should have been red flags or maybe didn't need to stay out quite so long. Mercedes had a special orange livery to in support of their newly announced concept car, their GTXX. And therefore, they wanted to make sure they got their marketing dollars.
An orange car, you say?
An orange
car. The car was orange?
The car was orange.
Interesting. Anything we want to say about that?
Mercedes to buy McLaren again? Something.
Okay. That's not where I was thinking.
What were you thinking? Max! I
got
it!
There you go.
I'm slow today. What else are we doing? Where are we going? Oh, yeah, racing. Yes. Then they started.
We're going motor racing.
We're going motor racing. And then they did a motor racing thing. And the only thing I will say about the starting of the racing today, it's clear that the ground effect cards are terrible in the wet. Whatever the magic that they do to suck them to the ground blows all out their rear end like a bad Taco Bell.
Well, there were a couple people that pitted right from the start to go onto slicks because it was drying. Mm-hmm. It did not tend to go well for those runners.
Was that one of Charles, or did Charles come later?
I think Charles did go in for that. It wasn't quite a Hungary 2021 Lewis only on the grid, but I thought it might be for a minute.
So did I. I thought everybody was going to pile in, but then they got to the final sector and they were like, it's a bit damp out here. Maybe I shouldn't do this.
Well, it was really only the last 3 corners where you needed inters. Like, that was crazy.
And then we raced, and it was amazing. It was fun, and people were going backwards and forwards until somebody managed to ram into Liam Lawson.
Well, that happened on lap 1.
Indeed.
I will say, I don't think it was Liam's fault.
No,
I think he just got punted. So Liam's bad luck continues.
Who was it that punted him off? Franco? Not Franco, sorry. Was it Ocon, perchance? Because he decided to do that to somebody else later. Because Ocon punted off Hajar later.
I don't. It's not showing up in the Wikipedia race result or race report. And I'm sure I could go watch the restart again, but I don't feel like it.
No,
it was. I think it was one of the Hasses. I think it was Ocon. Or
sounds about right for Ocon.
Yeah,
let's just blame it on Ocon. It would be
sure.
fun.
Sounds great.
Yep. And we went around for a while, and then the track was drying out, and people were being brave.
Then we had Gabriel Bortoleto on lap 3 have an accident.
He did that all of his own free will, didn't he?
He did. Most of them were of their own free will.
Yeah. And he called out.
And that brought out a virtual safety car.
Yep.
Because his rear, he went spinning and then left part of his rear wing on the track and then ended up pulling off to the side. We got a virtual safety car. Then we got back going again. Lando got through on Max. Oscar got through on Max. Then it started really raining. They changed over to inters.
Yeah, the people who'd remained on slicks.
Yeah. Well, the people who even remained on inters put on fresh inters.
Yep.
You know, Max got past Lando. And then it really started raining, and instead of red flagging it, they just put out the safety car.
And again, because they wanted to make it clear that Max is going to Mercedes next year. But also I thought it was a reasonable choice. I felt that it was a much more reasonable choice given the predicted length of the rain and the level of the rain, that it was not safe for racing, but it was not so bad that they couldn't wait 10 minutes going around behind the safety car. I thought there was a good trade-off against going for a red flag.
Yeah, George really wanted the red flag because it would help him out with his terrible strategy calls. Fernando Alonso was absolutely livid about how he was somehow down in like P17 and Lance Stroll was in P3 or something like that, which was absolutely hilarious. Which the last time from qualifying, the last time Lance out-qualified Fernando was the British Grand Prix last year. Fernando out-qualified him, so it's now gone a full year of Fernando out-qualifying Lance Stroll.
You should remember that George got on the radio and said, "I think we should be brave." And then the radio engineer came back and said, "We should be brave, but not suicidal."
That was like lap 50. We're not there yet. Or lap 40. We're not there yet.
No, that was way early. Was it?
It was late. It was.
I'm so confused.
It was in the second drying period after the deluge of rain.
Okay. We'll scrub that from your minds, people. We will come back to it later.
And then probably the moment that I would say defined the race would be Oscar slamming on his brakes. For
right
the
as the safety car ended.
Yeah. Well, as he had become the safety car in the regulations, because, the lights had gone out and all that. And he accelerated and then jammed on his brakes. Max put on a really good show, but also the telemetry data was not kind to Oscar because it was almost 60 PSI of brake pressure and like 100 miles an hour decrease in speed. I don't know how he's like, that's not a penalty. It's like, no, bud, that was a penalty.
It was pretty bad from Oscar, and I'm not entirely sure he was necessarily attempting to pull a fast one, but it was pretty close to him trying to pull a fast one. I feel like it was one of those situations where you're trying to do something you shouldn't be doing, but you're trying to do the thing that you should be doing, and you decide if you push it a little bit, maybe it'll be okay, versus maliciously like, I'm going to slam the anchors on and catch that little bugger out behind me. It is interesting, as you watched behind him, almost everybody else had to pull to the side as well.
Yeah, I would say it was one of those, this worked well in the dry, but given the visibility in the wet, it made everything look worse. And if he had done it in the dry, we might not have known of just how bad it was. Because I think it was something similar to what he pulled in like Barcelona.
Yes.
So yeah, it's every good Formula One driver has their own unique way to restart a race. We saw, Max has a style. Max liked to push people for a while until that was deemed, no, you have to actually be behind them, not just next to them and slightly behind them. But man, he was not happy about that penalty.
Before we get to how upset Oscar was about the penalty, Max was clearly upset because Max comes round to the third from last corner. I can remember what they're all called. And on the restart, and drops it.
Oh, spins.
Oh, I love Max because every time the car spins or is slightly out of control, he keeps it under control. He did this to himself, I think, because he was probably slightly annoyed. But he still managed to keep it under control and make it not into the barrier. But he lost 10 places.
He was down to P10, P11 or something like that.
Yeah,
it was not good.
It was all the way down the back.
And it was also like Red Bull had set up that car clearly for a dry or fast qualifying, and then they just trust Max to do the right thing in the race. And I think the race was wetter than they thought it would be, to the point of that setup now just became terrible. And he finally started to make inroads after the track was deemed DRS capable, which I don't know how a track is DRS capable when it's not slick tire capable, but maybe that's just spending too much time looking at the Formula One game by Codemasters.
Yes, I think that is. Because we've done it in a number of years where they've had it turned on DRS when it's been dry enough to perform braking maneuvers, but not dry.
Yeah, so I don't know quite what the crossover is on the DRS period, but I do find it very interesting how I thought they turned it on a little quickly, but it did help make the race a little bit more spicy as Lewis was making gains in the Ferrari and moving up past Lance Stroll and chasing down the Nico Hulkenberg in P3.
Lewis, at some point, George almost gets, or in fact did get past Lewis. Oh, that was beautiful. When George gets past Lewis and then they're coming up behind him. And then George tries to do Ocon and then somehow gets it all confused. And Lewis is like, oh, I'll have that, please. And gets past both of them, getting back the place and getting a +1 place. And then he shoots off down the road. And I was surprised that George got stuck behind Ocon for lap after lap after lap. Oh, it was Gasly as well. He gets stuck and just keeps going. And like, can't you get past him? Why can't you get past him, George? Is your contract up for negotiation? Surely you should be driving better than this.
It was very interesting for sure. Yeah, it was. It did seem that this to me was like, I think overall it was a good race, but I think it was one of the worst rain races I've ever seen.
I think I agree, but I would like you to expound upon that.
Because generally in a wet dry or a wet race or a wet to dry race or a variable condition race, you see a lot of overtakes, you see a lot of people making the car work, the raw talent of some drivers coming out over others. And there were really just seemed like a lot of trains that were happening and people trying to get past. And Silverstone is generally known as a track where like overtakes can happen. Like, it's got those good long straights. It's got some good high speed corners that you can take multiple lines through and everything like that. Like, really the Maggots Beckett's is kind of really the only place where you really have to go single file. There's some other bits where you can like kind of go side by side. So on a track that like we know generally produces good racing, even in the dry, it was weird to me that like we had this variable condition race. Maybe it's just the fact that like the sun didn't come out until about 10 laps to go. Cause it was rainy on the way to the grid. Then the sun suddenly came out and the track dried quickly. Then another deluge of rain happened, but it stayed cloudy for a while and the track really didn't dry out, as opposed to like if the sun had come out, it just started drying right away. But like, we didn't see, and some of this is car setup for sure. Like we saw Max do an amazing drive through the grid at Interlagos last year in variable conditions, very wet conditions, and a car that sucked. This car is no better, and Max was just stuck back in P10 like for a while. And I know his setup didn't help him, but because of how skinny that rear ring was, versus like the Interlagos setup that had a lot higher wing, higher downforce. So yeah, but it wasn't just Max. Like Lewis took a while to get past Lance Stroll and had a hard time chasing down Nico Hulkenberg, which that Ferrari should be light years quicker than a Sauber. It was
funny because you'd watch it on the straights, and that's where Nico would pull ahead. He'd come round onto the hangar straight or wherever it was, and Lewis would open his DRS, and then he just wouldn't close. He would just stay with the Sauber, and it was very strange. It was very unexpected.
Very draggy car. But yes. It was, so like from a standpoint of, it was an interesting race because it was a variable conditioned race. But even then, like it's almost like they also all went for the crossover period way too quickly in the last couple laps, in the sense of, everybody seemed to have some kind of excursion off the track. George and Charles had the best excursions. George's pirouette to the hangar straight was fantastic. Yeah, it was all good.
I was so happy with George. I was so happy. Like, I want to give George a hug because he did everything that you would want George to do to screw up, and it was fantastic. I loved it.
It makes it seem like he did sign a contract this week, even though he rejected a Mercedes 1+1.
Very good point. He must have signed with Cadillac.
Yeah.
Or Red Bull.
Yeah. But it was just, but as far as like a wet to dry race or even a variable condition tire race, I don't feel like this one delivered. Like,
no, I agree.
I'm not gonna say it was a bad race. I think it was a good race, but like I kept waiting for the exciting thing to happen, and for the most part, after that safety car period, very few people really changed. And like, even though we had a wet to dry finish, like, you know, I don't know if the track just didn't dry enough or everybody gambled way too early. And yeah, but it wasn't even like, and even the gamblers to some extent, because if you think of it, any other track that maybe was a little closer, Charles or George doing what they did at Maggots and Beckett's were going to hit a damn wall, break the car, and we would have gotten a safety car, and that could have like reset everything all over again and give people a chance for, do we put on new inners and things like that. But because Silverstone is so wide open and does have the gravel things that people say we need gravel to punish drivers, well, they just went skidding right over the gravel and kept on going. When are they going to beach?
The thing I will say is I think you're correct that there was lots. The unexpected impact, the assumed impact of weather is that you kind of change things up and you give people a whole lot of opportunities. Everybody tried to seize those opportunities, but all they did was not make any difference. Everybody went off because everybody went off. It didn't really make any difference. Net and net. It didn't have the same multiplying effect, except the podium finisher who broke their duck. It was exciting, but also nothing happened.
Yeah, and that's why like it was an interesting race, because it was an interesting race, but it was probably the boringest wet dry race I've ever seen.
Ever?
What's a more boring one?
There was a very boring one in Korea in like 2011.
Okay, that was a while ago.
I mean, it was a while ago. Yes, it was. I enjoyed it.
I think you could probably, if I remember how the race went, and granted, I probably don't. But with a 94 was it 93 or 94 European Grand Prix at Donington, where like Ayrton Senna had the God lap on the first lap. Because I think the first lap was interesting, but then everything else just kind of stayed the same the rest of the race.
And the equivalent in this race was that something happened under the safety car, and that's really it.
Yeah, like...
Okay. Yeah, I'd agree with that.
The most interesting thing in the back half of the race was the radio messages.
Yes.
Between like Charles and his engineer. Because I think, if anything, I think Lewis has been really good for Charles, because Lewis isn't putting up with Ferrari shit, and Charles is now like, oh, I don't have to put up with this? And you can see like Charles is getting a lot more, I won't say spicier on the radio, but
punchier.
At least punchier for sure. Punchier is a good word. But yeah, Charles is definitely digging in a little bit more in the sense of like, you're not going to tell me that the safety car is ending?
Did they forget to tell him the safety car was ending?
Yeah, didn't I send you that? I thought I sent it.
While you find that, did you? There was the Lando message, which is very similar, where Lando gets a radio message from his wall saying, Oscar has 10 laps, or has a 10-second penalty, and he also just went off. Be careful. Failing to tell Lando where Oscar went off, aka where the track's a bit suspicious. And he's like, you could tell me where. We didn't hear the follow-up.
Oh, yes, apparently Threads now sends to Threads' own messaging thing and not the Instagram messaging thing.
Oh, well, that would require me to actually have checked it.
Ryan, why are you asking me all these questions? You didn't tell me the safety car is ending. Yes, I did. Safety car is ending now. I didn't get the message, so be careful to the radio.
Wow.
The other big one from Charles was, we need to work. Maybe we sit down after the race, but all the different displays, I have like different info. The brake's always changing position. I have no idea where the brake is now. So like, yeah. Also, there's water that came into my visor. I couldn't see anything, like a huge splash of water. Hilarious.
Well, that because we went through the big rocks and that splashed all the water up.
Yes. That also means if you didn't look at the Threads messages, you also didn't see a great Ferrari merch.
Oh, that can't be real.
I don't think it's real, but it's fantastic.
Okay. Great. I will not discuss that because that will put us into the explicit content message on Spotify, and I'm not willing to say that there was a Ferrari shirt covered in splatter that said the words "come first."
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Perfect. On that interlude, shall we switch over to driver of the day, or do you have more things you would like to say about this race that was both?
The only thing I think we need to mention is Oscar being like, I think we should change positions back and then race it out.
Yes, Oscar on the radio being like, well, if you think that the penalty is not really fair, maybe we should just change back and I can go in the front again. And I'm like, Oscar, you have truly transcended into a world championship candidate driver with that.
I loved it.
Absolutely. It was
First off, Oscar, your penalty was totally worth it. Second, I love that you asked that question. Third, I wish they had gone along with it just to see Lando's response.
It was 6 seconds down the road. It was terrible.
Yeah. The only other thing would be that very recently, when Kimi Antonelli got his very first podium, Max and George put their differences aside and showered Kimi Antonelli in champagne. The McLarens did not get the message to celebrate one Nico Hülkenberg.
No, they didn't. Nico, we haven't mentioned this at all. Nico Hülkenberg got a podium, breaking a 237 race duck. You don't feel he deserved it, do you?
Well, I mean, he was third, and he had plenty of time to lose third. This to me feels like, I mean, the result's the result. Like, it is what it is. That happens all the time in Formula One. Sometimes the result is the result. Daniel Ricciardo being the slower of the McLarens, but happened to be in the right position at the right time when there was a red flag at Monza so that he led the rest of the race. Like, yeah, weird stuff happens in Formula One. The fastest person doesn't always win or get the result. So, I loved being able to say, why is Nico in the seat? He hasn't even gotten a podium, and how many different tries he's had to get a podium. And now I can't say that. But, I mean, the result's the result, and everybody behind him had plenty of chance to take it off of him, and he actually had to drive into it by getting past Lance Stroll. So, do I have to choose between a Lance Stroll podium and a Nico Hülkenberg podium? I guess I do, and I'll take the Nico Hülkenberg podium.
I agree with that. But here's the thing. Sometimes a driver just needs to have the win for them to lean into it. And so this is the podium for Hülkenberg. He'll maybe transcend to another level. And when he gets a good car next year, because Audi's going to make him a good car, hypothetically speaking, maybe he'll be world champion and then he can nope out.
I would love if Audi just tries to make it an all-wheel drive car.
I would love to see them try that. I'd love to see how they could try and make that happen within the regulations.
I believe the regulations say the power goes to the rear wheels. I don't think you can have an all-wheel drive car.
Well, as long as they don't send power to the front wheels, they can make that somehow. They're engineers, Andrew. They should think outside the box.
Yes, but power to the front wheels is what makes it an all-wheel drive car.
But also, they have Matteo Binotto, and we know how he likes to cheat with the engine. So,
yeah, but are they designing an engine? I don't think they are.
Yeah, I know. Audi building their own engine. The Audi is a full soup to nuts works team. They're doing an engine, they're doing the chassis, they're doing the whole 9 yards.
Well, I look forward to seeing them on the back of the grid.
Indeed, because they're doing well. They got third today, so good job to them.
With not their own engine. I mean, we saw how long it took Honda to build a good engine in Formula One. I think they're helped a little bit by the fact of they're coming in a new engine formula, so kind of everybody has to rebuild the engine versus, hey, we're going to come in several years late to this formula and think we can do it better than everybody else, which eventually they got there, but it took a while.
Cadillac are going to try it too. Who is your driver of the day / who couldn't wait for it to be over?
It's the same driver.
Oh.
Nico Hülkenberg.
Driver of the day. He got 43% of the vote for the official one, so you're siding with the masses today.
Yes, but I also think he's the driver who couldn't wait for their day to be over because he had to be sitting there in third going, with Lewis chasing him going, I've been in this position before and I've lost it before, and oh dear God, please let this checkered flag happen so I can have this podium before I lose it for a bajillionth time.
Yeah, credit to Nico for holding it together and get it over the line. My driver of the day is Mr. Max Verstappen because he kept it out of the wall on a number of occasions, so credit to him.
Does that mean that George and Charles also get honorary mentions of driver of the day for keeping it out of the wall as they went spinning across everything?
No, because they made explicit choices that guaranteed that they were going to have to keep it out of the wall.
Fair enough.
Just like I've talked about before, you don't get credit for putting out the fire that you started.
How is work these days, Dominic?
We don't currently have that problem at work. I mean, maybe collectively for the entire company, but that's a different conversation. The driver who couldn't wait for it to be over is Mr. George Russell because of his deep, deep embarrassment for being a moron. Because he made a suicidal choice, the idiot.
Yeah, we didn't talk about that because but that was we want to be brave, not suicidal. And then I believe he did make his own call of let's do it. And it was not the time.
Yeah, it was great. It was
George,
actually,
the tire whisperer, continues to be the tire whisperer.
Yeah, he is the tire whisperer. It's like when he whispers into some love interest of his something really terrible that just puts them off and makes them run away. Which team debrief would you like to be in today? Or maybe you want to be with the stewards?
Definitely Ferrari. I think this is I think I'm now just a staple in the Ferrari debrief room, given how many times I've said I want to be in these debriefs. But the fact that you have both drivers seemingly getting more and more frustrated in a variable condition race about the communication from the pit wall. Apparently, Ferrari lost Lewis's GPS for half the race. Like they didn't know where Lewis was.
That's poor. The thing is unlike other teams, like when they lost George's car and it was falling apart, you go like, oh, it's an electronic failure. Being Ferrari, I could actually think that they actually lost it. Like just in the garage, they're like, where's the cable that connects Lewis's GPS? And it's just,
here it is.
We'll find it. Oh yeah, we'll find it later.
In before they're DQ'd because they're like 3 grams underweight because that's the weight of the GPS cable that they didn't plug in.
To give Ferrari some mild credit, they did have a good message today where Ricky asked Lewis for an update and Lewis gave an update and it seemed very reasonable. I thought that was pretty reasonable. I thought that's good with that. For my debrief, I'd like to be in McLaren's debrief because I really want them to debrief the message that we have referred to where it's like, maybe you should let me through if you think the penalty's unfair because he's only 6 seconds away. I just want to see like the entire team just laugh at that as they replay that over the headphones and be like, really, Oscar? What? Yeah. Championship watch? Max gets his clause?
Potentially. So the thing I've heard is that from, as I said, very loud on social media about Max to Mercedes. It seems like both conditions are actually true for an exit clause of Red Bull have to be 3 or better in the constructors and Max has to be 3 or better in the drivers, that both of those can trigger exit clauses. One of those is like, essentially you're not giving me a car that's good enough to get up there. And the other one being like, you've hired a driver that's better than me and I want to go someplace else. So yeah, it seems like the exit clause might be triggered. And if not, we have 2 races for George to pull back some points on Max.
Yeah, because Max is still in third with 165 points. So disappointing.
Yes.
What else have we got here? Oh, Spicy Takes and Rumors. Number 1 here is, and I don't think we've talked about it enough or mentioned it at all entirely in this podcast. Did you know that Max Verstappen has an exit clause?
Yeah, but I think it's very... if you look at this race, I could see that everybody was uniquely aware of the exit clause. Mm-hmm. From like Red Bull being like, we have to do whatever we can to get Max as far up the grid on track position so that he can like haul the Red Bull higher in the constructor's standings or himself in the driver's standings. You had Max dropping it all the way back to 10th, maybe
suspicious
in a way that we haven't seen him ever do in the wet. Maybe Brazil 2016 when he did a spinny spin, but it was like his first time in a Formula 1 car.
Turkey 2020 where he was going at full tilt and spun it on a straight, but he did it in 360 and kept it going. So
he's done it before. It's weird for him to do it behind a safety car. But yeah, so Max dropping it to P10 and then not really recovering that well. He did get back up to 5th. Good job for Max, to be honest.
Max was not expecting everybody else to be reasonable and let him through.
George
so he spun it trying to stay at the back.
He didn't
expect George to make a poor life choice and expected George to get in front of him.
Well, George is doing like the strategy calls that are either going to make him win, which puts him well in Mercedes' eyes, or put him out of reach of Max's or of overtaking Max to trigger the exit clause. Like everything seemed like you could easily put on like a conspiracy theory tinfoil hat. Hey, welcome to our podcast. And say that like every decision that Red Bull and Mercedes made was all around the exit clause. That makes sense.
Every decision that was being made by Red Bull and George Russell specifically was all to make sure that George finished behind Max Verstappen.
Yeah. And Mercedes in this case, if there is an exit clause, and I'm sure if there is, they're aware of it, it's just, yeah, George, do what you want, because you're only going to cement our decision one way or the other.
Yeah.
Because if you do prove you are the second coming, great, we'll keep you and give you a better contract. But if you do this, it's like, cool, Max, welcome home.
Welcome to Germany. It's very close to the Netherlands.
It just happens to be located in wherever Brackley. Yeah, happens to be located in Brackley.
My spicy take is that Cadillac is turning into a serious team if they're willing to take the time to hire Keanu Reeves. And I feel like Keanu Reeves would not just sign on for the money because he's Keanu Reeves.
Yeah, he's not Nicolas Cage.
No, exactly. Therefore, Cadillac must be a serious team, and I'm interested to see how well they do.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see who ends up in the seat. I wonder if, contracts have already been signed or not. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it'll be interesting.
George plus Valtteri, perfect combination. I think it's going to be amazing.
That would be really interesting to see if the Mercedes loses 2 drivers to Cadillac. Yeah, that would be very interesting.
Yeah. Predictions for the Formula 1 Moet and Chandon Belgian Grand Prix 2025.
Are those actual Belgian companies? Did they listen to me?
No, they're French. Moet and Chandon. Moat and Chandon.
Yeah, but there is a French-speaking part of Belgium.
True, but isn't Moet owned by LVMH?
They are owned by LVMH.
Well, there we go. Who's a French company? So.
They
are. My predictions.
That is quite a company. Louis Vuitton, Monet, Hennessy.
But
jeez.
You need the Moet. You get the Moet while you're buying the clothes from the first one, and when you get the credit card bill at the end of the month, you drink the Hennessy. So who are your predictions for Belgianing?
I will say that Max and Oscar will duel it out in Belgium.
For the win?
I didn't say that. I just said they'll duel it out.
Okay, great.
Yeah. It could be George Russell tire whispering his way to another disqualification.
Love it. That's the kind of thinking I like.
And I will also say Valtteri Bottas will be driving the Alpine.
Because they do have 3 weeks to make this choice, so they've got plenty of time to and ah about it. So, okay.
Which that can only go poorly for Gasly.
Really? Why will it go poorly for Gasly? Because he'll be shown up?
Yeah, because the only good way, if Gasly continues to outperform his teammate, in this case would be Valtteri, fair enough, Valtteri is hopping back in an F1 car for the first time in a while outside of a simulator. If Valtteri rocks in and immediately shows up Pierre Gasly in the Alpine, that is not good for Pierre. And that just makes the whole Alpine organization look even worse than it already does with their handling of Colapinto and Jack Dugan.
The reason that Valtteri will end up in the car is because it's part of a trial balloon. He's going to report back to Mercedes on whether the team's worth buying or not.
Could also be that.
Anyway, I'm going to say that Max is going to dominate on his second home turf. He will win by 30 seconds and no longer gets his contract escape hatch.
Well, if the constructors is to be believed, I think he will still get the escape hatch.
We'll see.
I mean, the really bold prediction is Max announced to Mercedes before we go to Belgium.
Oh, yeah, that'd be great.
Actually, no, I think that'll happen over the summer break because the first one after the summer break is Zandvoort, right?
Oh, yes. You are correct. That would be perfect. Bring all the Mercedes merch. Get it sold off.
Yep.
And then my second prediction is that Ferrari will have to go very, very slowly because they don't want to get disqualified because the plank on the bottom of the car wears out on that track.
Yeah, it's really not good for Ferrari.
No. It's going to be perfect.
We haven't actually talked about Plankgate at all on this podcast.
What is Plankgate? The steel titanium problem?
The fact that Ferrari can't lower the right height of their car because they keep dragging the skid plate on the ground, and that's what leads them to being disqualified. So they have to raise the car ride height, which then nukes the performance. So their car's actually because of the skid plate and it wearing out too quickly.
So what you're saying is Lewis Hamilton's the problem. Because when he was at Mercedes, they couldn't lower the car because of regulations, which means they couldn't run it to get the good performance out of it. And now he's at Ferrari and they can't lower the car to get the good performance out of it. Who is the common thread in this? Lewis Hamilton.
Some crappy engineer somewhere?
Yeah, it's also remember the engineer guy came over from Mercedes with Lewis, and Lewis said he was talking to him this week trying to get some driving characteristics back into the car that he likes.
Oh, we did have a little bit of a listener feedback from our last podcast, by the way.
Oh, we did?
Yes. Somebody was suggesting that we were so bold to suggest that the Mercedes with 0 pods had an operating window.
Oh, I think it did.
Well, to which I replied, it did have a race win.
It did have a race win. It also has an operating window specifically that if they kept it that low, it would have done damage to both drivers' backs, who would then needed to have been operated on in a window of time that was appropriate.
Yeah, but drivers are replaceable.
True. They are just flesh bags. Was it meat bags that can just be tossed on the heap?
Just trained monkeys.
Trained monkeys.
You know, the more I see Ferrari and how Ferrari like treats their drivers in all things when it comes to like feedback and strategy and something like that, I really understand Niki Lauda's comment about like take a trained monkey and he could do my job sort of thing comment.
Mm-hmm.
It makes so much more sense. Of that is how Ferrari thinks of their drivers, as trained monkeys who don't deserve any sort of feedback and input.
And yet Niki Lauda goes to Mercedes and treats everybody with respect.
Well, yeah. Because he knows how he wanted to be treated.
This gives us hope that Ferrari will eventually depart ways with both of their drivers and allow them to grow into the good people that they should be.
I mean, Niki Lauda told Enzo his car was crap, and Enzo said, "All right, if you're wrong, I'm going to fire you." Like that's not a good place to.
No,
that's not a good working environment.
No, it is not.
On the plus side, Niki Lauda was right, and then Enzo trusted him.
And then because Niki got a championship in a Ferrari, right?
I think he got 2 championships in a Ferrari.
Okay. I wasn't sure whether he got the other ones because he got one at McLaren as well, right?
I think it was 75 and 77. Probably could have, if he didn't crash, probably would have had 76.
He would have been a 5-time champion.
75 and 77, and 84 was a McLaren, so 77 would have been with...
Oh, he was only a 3-time champion?
He was only a 3-time champion.
Waster.
Really?
No, I'm joking. But only a 3-time champion. At least he's not a total washed up person like Jenson Button with 1 championship. Or Nico 7-time beater Rosberg.
Yeah, but let's be honest. I mean, Rush is probably one of the greatest motorsporting movies of all time.
It is a good movie. Great damn.
Yeah.
So we are awaiting your feedback at tinfoilhelmets.com, where you can provide us with as much insight as you would like us to share, and let us know your conspiracy theories and wants. Also tell your friends to like, listen, rate and subscribe to the greatest F1 podcast you have never listened to.